Let's get Rick Leckner's analysis of the big news coming from the Minister of Transport, Geneviève Guilbeault, unveiling her strategy, the quote-unquote National Road Safety Strategy, 27 measures to try and make Quebec's roads safer. Rick is on the line. Hi, Rick.
Good morning, Elias. Anything that can be done to improve safety in school zones, go for it. Why does this have to be done over 5 years? I don't know.
Yeah.
I got to tell you something just at the outset. Quebec sometimes is a little slow. There are excellent measures in school zones in the United States. Florida is one I'm familiar with. It's been in effect for years. I've mentioned this before. No one speeds through a school zone in Florida, South Florida, because they have designated zones with flashing lights during school hours. The maximum allowable speed limit is 15 miles per hour, which is about 25 kilometers an hour. And there are generally motorcycle policemen posted there. They have enough police to enforce it, because there are 3 E's that I've learned in school safety: engineering, enforcement, and education. And we can do whatever we want and put up the fanciest signs or whatever, but if it's not enforced and people know that they're going to be fined, not just in terms of dollars with a loss of demerit points, it won't work. So let them just adopt what they've been doing for years in South Florida, and I'm telling you, it will work.
So, Rick, I love how you went straight to the point here, right? Because it was very clear to me, looking at what was announced today, so much of the focus was on school zones. But I guess the first question is, Quebec is really just playing catch-up here, right? We're not reinventing any wheels. We're playing catch-up with the rest of the world.
We often do, and there is still a way to go to catch up with is done in other provinces, in other states when it comes to road safety and traffic management. We've discussed this ad nauseum. I don't know why it takes us so long to get it right. Hopefully we will. We're headed in the right direction. As I've mentioned to you before, we talked about this in July, adding more photo cameras.
Yes.
I'm all for it. Let people call it a cash grab. I don't care. It does work. The best thing that they're going to do about this is have new technology, new for Quebec, which has been in existence for a long time, quote unquote, new technology, which will allow the cheaters to be caught. In other words, they still slow down, for example, on the Laurentian Highway southbound at Blainville, kilometer 24. Everybody knows there's about 5 signs before. They warn you. And as soon as they're through that zone, you see people just speed up and go for it again. That has to stop, and that can stop with the new technology.
Yeah, so they'll be going to that technology which measures your speed on a large stretch as opposed to the one spot. Other thing here, Rick, and I wonder if this is more playing catch-up, changes to the demerit points, for violations based on speed. Seems like demerit points going to get a little bit heftier. And then the changing of the code, endangering pedestrians and cyclists as a new thing that you can get dinged for. Your thoughts on that? Absolutely.
I think that and we talked about this as well previously. With photo radar, I believe there are no applicable demerit points. There absolutely should be. There's a whole balance to this thing, though, because as we have also discussed, motorists are driving crazy, increasingly so because they're frustrated with all the construction, with everything that's going on. There's wider sidewalks, more speed bumps, more stop signs, more planters, more bollards. You can't drive anywhere. And so I see routinely every day that I'm on the people going through. Stop signs don't exist, even though they're posted. Red lights for many people don't exist. So we have to do whatever is necessary to cramp down on issues and safety within the school zones. But elsewhere, let's just think about this more. Just because a resident asks for a stop sign in his corner doesn't mean one should be put up. NDG is thinking of making the speed limit on the Carey Service Road 40 kilometers an hour. That's crazy. That's crazy. Because all that's going to do is prompt people to drive more recklessly because they're just going to get fed up. We have to find that balance between doing whatever can be done to slow down vehicles, and bikes for that matter, through school zones, and just be more reasonable in some of the areas of the city and try to make things more livable for everyone.
27 points here coming from Geneviève Guilbeault this morning on her plan for road safety. Here's one little tidbit that caught my attention. Some changes here for truck drivers. So it will now be necessary to do a course training to get a license to drive a truck, a Class 1 commercial vehicle license. Before, if you had a Class 5, which is what we all have, for 3 years, and then pass certain practical tests, you could get a license. No longer the case. Good move, Rick?
Excellent move. Look, we've seen some very terrible accidents involving trucks. Most recently, there was one at Mount Royal. And it's just, again, better training, better education, and, again, making sure that the drivers behind the wheels of trucks are trained, realizing what they're driving and what the turning radius is and how difficult it is at many intersections, because that turning radius has been made smaller by all these initiatives, quote unquote, by the city of Montreal.
Rick, I want you to respond to the vibe from some of our listeners on our text line. And I'm getting text messages from listeners, and the gist of it is crack down on motorists. They should be cracking down on cyclists and pedestrians.
Yes, absolutely correct. The motorists are the bad people sometimes, but so are the pedestrians and the cyclists. How many people do you see walking along the street texting?
A lot.
Exactly. I've seen people walking along the street texting and walk into a telephone pole or something. Mm-hmm. There are tremendous distractions for all mobility issues, and this cannot be. I completely and utterly agree that this can't be restricted only to drivers. The cyclists and pedestrians need to respect the rules, and the rules need to be enforced.
But if the goal, Rick, let me just push back a little bit. If the goal is to bring down the number of deaths, right? The 392 deaths we saw last year, 2022. Cyclists are not killing people in the numbers that cars are killing people, right? So if you want to save lives, should the focus be on a pedestrian on their phone or on the motorist that's not paying attention and going 20 kilometers over the speed limit?
And what happens, Elias, when the motorist all of a sudden has to swerve to avoid hitting a cyclist or a pedestrian who's been distracted? I don't see a lot of cyclists texting, but I see a lot of pedestrians. So if at the last minute a motorist has to divert aggressively to avoid an accident with a cyclist or a pedestrian who's doing something that they shouldn't do, that's an issue as well.
Rick, just to wrap up here, are you giving some kudos, applause to the transport minister?
Absolutely. And here's a stat as a last thought. The chances of fatalities at 50 kilometers an hour are 40%. The chance of a fatality at 30 kilometers an hour is 5%.
Wow. Well, that says it all, right? Especially for our school zones. Rick, thanks so much.
Pleasure.
That's Rick Leckner, CJAD 800's Wall of Fame traffic reporter, with the news coming out this morning on the big changes coming to Quebec's roads.